and our players across the league are too often the targets. This is not something any player in this league should have to tolerate.
Do you think Caitlin's being used as a pawn? Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us.
You know, it feels like everyone's absolutely stunned by what's been happening lately. But honestly, for those of us who've been paying close attention, this moment felt completely inevitable. And it all truly exploded right here, right now. Believe me, you're going to want to stick around until the very end to fully understand why the Indiana Fever are actually on the verge of making some truly massive, game-changing moves. The club, very recently, dropped a series of incredibly significant announcements, including a bombshell revelation about their star player, Caitlin Clark. It's news that has sent legitimate shockwaves reverberating through the entire league. And here's the kicker. Right in the middle of all this chaos, the legendary Sue Bird stepped forward, and she brutally, unequivocally denounced the rampant racism she's personally witnessed in the WNBA. Let's be real, folks. This was long overdue. Think about it. Countless legends, MVP winners, gold medalists, they've all quietly endured similar obstacles and faced comparable challenges throughout their careers. But then, almost out of nowhere, someone finally found the courage, the sheer audacity to truly speak out. Sue Bird wasn't just talking to hear herself speak either. Oh no, she came armed with what I can only describe as pyrotechnics, bringing the kind of heat and undeniable truth that simply cannot be ignored. And let me tell you, the Indiana Fever couldn't ignore it. They've responded to this with an impact that will absolutely define their future. But first, before we dive into all the specifics,
there is one thing I want to reset, that we want to reset, and it's the language being used around fans. Fever fans, Caitlin fans, new fans. That actually has to go.
And honestly, the most incredible part? Sue Bird, with literally everything on the line, didn't even hesitate to dive deep into a no-holds-barred podcast conversation with none other than Megan Rapinoe. This was a massive risk, a potentially career-jeopardizing move, but she bravely went forward anyway. On that podcast, she fearlessly put forward the hard questions, the uncomfortable truths. She wanted to know why Caitlin Clark was becoming the target of such intense racial hatred. Why were her truly outstanding accomplishments, her record-breaking sales numbers, her undeniable impact, why was all of it being so blatantly disregarded? And then, you know what's even crazier? She went a crucial step further, subtly dropping hints about the very real possibility of a systemic league conspiracy specifically targeting Caitlin. Seriously, let that sink in for a moment.
Today, did you, when you went and kind of swatted at Caitlin, did you intend to hit her in the eye? And if so, could you just, or if not, either way, could you talk about what happened on that play?
I don't even know why I would intend to hit anybody in the eye. That doesn't even make sense to me. But no, I didn't. I didn't know I hit her, actually. I was trying to make a play on the ball, and I guess I followed through and I hit her. So obviously it's never intentional. That's not even like the type of player that I am. So yeah.
Did you and Marina kind of laugh about it afterwards? It looked like there was later on in the game they caught you guys laughing about it.
No, I just told you I didn't even know I hit her. So I can't laugh about something I didn't know happened.
So where did this whole chaotic situation truly begin to boil over? It actually kicked off when Day Carrington found herself being questioned by journalist Christine after a game about what seemed like a rather odd occurrence. Now, I know what you're probably thinking right now. You'd assume this was just another standard post-game query, right? Athletes are constantly fielding questions about all sorts of challenging circumstances, controversies, and on-court incidents. But this time, oh man, things took a really sharp turn, and they went south fast. Megan Rapinoe, with her characteristic sharp wit, immediately retorted that despite how innocent the question might have appeared on the surface, its very phrasing carried a deeply unsettling racial undertone. And just like that, a completely fresh and frankly absolutely critical perspective on the entire topic abruptly surfaced, shifting the narrative entirely.
Obviously, hearing it initially, my visceral reaction was like, that's not good. That doesn't feel good. That feels racist, to be honest.
And let's be brutally honest here. That seems racist, was the undeniable feeling. Sue Bird, being the true Sue Bird she is, simply could not and would not let this moment pass without embracing her customary rebellious posture. She didn't just critique, she openly slammed the media, singling out ESPN in particular for sensationalizing and twisting the situation into something far more inflammatory and damaging. Her point was crystal clear. The original question itself might not have been inherently racist, but the way the media chose to frame and present it, oh, that, my friends, was absolutely, unequivocally troublesome. Sue meticulously pointed out a stark, undeniable truth that often goes unaddressed. Athletes of color are routinely subjected to an exponentially higher degree of scrutiny and criticism compared to their white counterparts. Think about it this way. What really happens when a black athlete gets involved in a similar situation? Suddenly, it escalates beyond a simple incident. It morphs into a far more serious problem, a heated disagreement, or more often than not, it tragically devolves into a full-blown racial controversy. It's a double standard that's truly impossible to ignore, and it's happening right before our eyes.
I disagree with you on Christine Brennan's question being dickish, or she shouldn't have answered it, because it was something that was out there that everybody was talking about. And so she asked the question, and it was a great opportunity for Carrington to, on the record, say, no, I didn't do it. And that's all that happened. So I do disagree with you. I don't think it was a dickish question. I think it was a fine question based on what was going on at the moment.
Sue, ever the astute observer, immediately connected the dots, articulating that this wasn't just some isolated incident. No, it was unmistakably part of a much, much larger and deeply ingrained systemic picture. And she said this while she was practically still warming up for the main debate. Journalist Christine, for her part, courageously reprimanded both the WNBA and the media for their egregious failure to contain and, frankly, for actively allowing these damaging rumors to fester and spread. Even if Christine herself hadn't initially intended for things to spiral quite so far out of control, now here's where Sue's insight truly hits hard. She firmly believes that if Day Carrington had been a white athlete, this entire event would have received significantly less attention, probably blowing over with barely a ripple. However, and this is crucial, if a white player had been in Carrington's exact position, we would have been treated to an absolutely full-fledged, meticulously crafted narrative, complete with every single possible ramification and an emotional angle explored to its fullest extent. The double standard couldn't be clearer, and Sue laid it bare.
It led to the Twitter trolls and bots taking over. And what started there was this narrative of petty, jealous players hating on Caitlin. Mm-hmm. That's really what happened. That's where it started. That we must just dislike her, that we look at her side-eyed, that we don't want her to come in the WNBA and be successful, that we're hating on her, right? So we're petty and we're...
The immediate aftermath of all this, it was nothing short of a full-scale Twitter takeover, swarming with bots and various tools, all amplifying a toxic, divisive narrative. And it all kicked off with this unbelievably flimsy yet pervasive story implying that small-minded, envious WNBA players were simply despising Caitlin Clark. In fact, that's precisely what transpired. The narrative began with this insidious idea that we just don't like her, that we can't see things from her perspective, that we don't want her to succeed in the WNBA, and that we are despising her. So, essentially, the coded message was, we are envious and petty. And here's where it gets truly wild. Sue went on to painstakingly explain how a single, seemingly innocuous comment from none other than Diana Taurasi, one of the most iconic figures in the sport, was the very spark that ignited this entire dangerous narrative. Yes, the legend herself made the casual decision to utter a statement so inherently powerful that it literally set the WNBA ablaze. We're talking about complete, unadulterated chaos erupting, all because of the crazy, unforeseen, rippling impact those initial words had. Our resident voice of reason, Sue Bird, had no choice but to step in and eloquently break down exactly what was happening. And this time, it had a far greater, more destructive effect than anyone could have possibly anticipated. When Sue stated that things became ugly, she wasn't just referring to the typical rough-and-tumble competition or the occasional on-court squabbling. No, she meant the game fundamentally stopped being about basketball the moment blatant hate speech started to rear its ugly head. You see, when fans start getting upset about issues that extend far beyond the game itself, issues like racism, deeply entrenched privilege, and every other ugly facet you could possibly imagine, that's when you know you've absolutely crossed a line that should never be breached.
Not at any point did I think anybody was playing dirty against Caitlin. Not at any point did I think Caitlin was targeted. And I'm going to stop on that word because what happened was these petty jealousy narratives that got formed. Then when the season started and people saw people blocking Caitlin's shot or picking her up full court, it then became, oh, they're targeting her. Oh, they're targeting.
And then Sue Bird dropped another absolute bombshell, revealing that Caitlin Clark was forced to grapple with far, far more than just the usual elbows and nasty trash talk. Oh no, this was completely different. We're not talking about symbolic blows here. Caitlin was literally dodging real ones. What's more, she felt an immense pressure to be constantly prepared for threats that went far beyond mere opposing team strategies every single time she stepped onto the court. This was absolutely not fair play. Players were actively, maliciously making fun of her. Sue made it unequivocally clear that this wasn't just about putting up a strong defense. The typical rough and tumble, the expected physicality of a WNBA game, paled in comparison to the sheer vitriol and targeting Caitlin was enduring. This was deeply personal, and it was undeniably nasty. Crucially, Sue, with her profound understanding, did not minimize the undeniable racial aspect of the situation. She articulated that there was a complex layer of dynamic to Caitlin's situation that extended far beyond simply why she was garnering so much attention or why she appeared to be promoted over other players. It was a volatile mix of racism, privilege, and the deeply rooted frustrations of how some players of color perceived her accomplishment as a metaphor for something much, much larger, overshadowing her actual basketball skill. Sue didn't hold back one bit. This wasn't merely a sports problem anymore. Instead, it had become a potent reflection of the wider systemic background of racism permeating the league and the boiling over frustrations that were now disturbingly playing out in real time, right there on the court, with Caitlin Clark tragically caught right in the brutal middle of it all.
That it is right now, like it's popping right now, and just being able to know that, like, I'm happy I'm happy to see all the girly girls being able to pop it and look cute on the runway and being able to continue that. Because
now, shifting gears significantly, some of the most vocal critics, like Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas, have evidently argued that Caitlin Clark is essentially getting the white girl pass. They certainly haven't been silent. In fact, they've been quite public in their criticisms, even accusing Caitlin Clark and her fan base of underlying racism. Sue Bird, in her signature candid style, spoke openly about Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas, almost as if she'd been holding on to this tea for far too long and it was finally time to spill it. Let me tell you, Angel Reese, ever since her explosive time at LSU, has been nothing short of vocal and incredibly self-assured. And Alyssa Thomas, she's a certified cornerstone, a foundational player for the Connecticut Sun. Both of these powerful athletes contend that Caitlin is, in their eyes, the WNBA's poster child for white privilege, asserting that she's receiving preferential, special treatment not because of her unparalleled skills, but solely because of the color of her skin. This is a heavy accusation, and it's fueling a significant debate.
All of what I've said led to this group of people being able to push those racist agendas, which really has been, in my opinion, the cause of all of this. And everybody from this moment on has, not everybody, but a lot of people have been operating under the assumption that these narratives, particularly the targeting narrative, is true. And that has...
But what about Sue's reaction to these damning accusations? Well, let me tell you, Sue Bird was absolutely not going to stand for it. She made it her personal mission, doing everything within her considerable power to unequivocally demonstrate that this white privilege narrative was not only deeply flawed, but entirely false, and it desperately needed to be abandoned, right now. This simply isn't the case, she declared loudly, and with crystal clear conviction. Because in her view, what Angel Reese and Alyssa Thomas were doing was not just ethically questionable, it was actively, profoundly damaging to the league and its players. She saw it as tearing down rather than building up, a dangerous path for the sport.
Racism has been impacting the WNBA well before this year. This is not a new
for
thing.
sure.
This is, and in that way, I do think Caitlin's being used as a pawn. Caitlin didn't bring racism to the WNBA. This has been happening. And that, I think, is what's been such a shock for all of us, that other people are surprised by this. We've been trying to.
So, here's the core of Sue Bird's perspective, her ultimate take on this entire complex situation. Look, she was essentially saying, Caitlin is undeniably getting a ton of attention. But let's not for a second pretend that it's just because she's white. It's because she is an absolutely amazing, once-in-a-generation player. Bird firmly believes that this entire incident has been deliberately twisted and warped into a sprawling narrative that bears almost no resemblance to reality whatsoever. Sue, with her sharp intellect and unwavering integrity, was simply not going to allow recent discourse to sensationalize or misrepresent this situation. Especially when Caitlin Clark is already so entunces in the limelight. Let's be honest, Bird herself has risen incredibly quickly through the ranks, and her dominance on the court, her sheer impact, is undeniably, spectacularly evident to anyone who watches her play. She absolutely earns her spotlight, period.
She's obviously doing amazing. Her game speaks for itself. I think my favorite part is just women's basketball, women's sports really, but women's basketball has been on the rise. And it's kind of like what Magic and Bird was to men's basketball. Like this moment, we kind of needed something.
This is that love. Yeah, and this is absolutely Caitlin's moment. And I think a lot of it has to do with her signature logo 3. Now, prepare yourselves for one of the most shocking disclosures of all. Sue Bird actually claimed to have communicated with Caitlin Clark personally, truly getting to know her and understanding her journey. And you know what that means for the entire white privilege narrative that Thomas and Reese have been pushing so aggressively? Indeed, Sue emphatically clarified that Caitlin is absolutely not some privileged athlete who just magically gains advantages simply because of her skin color. Instead, much like every other dedicated player, she has been putting in an immense amount of relentless effort, grinding tirelessly, and legitimately earning her ascent through the rankings. Bird, ever courageous, isn't afraid to openly admit that the entire problem is far, far more complicated and deeply nuanced than most people are willing to realize. This divisive narrative, she asserts, must be removed from the conversation. I can totally understand why it's been used sometimes, she might concede, noting that it's incredibly easy to just casually dismiss the Fever fan base that has to go when you're hit with a tough question during an interview. But here's the stark reality. Since they aren't exclusively Fever fans, all of these new fans must leave. No, that's not quite right. Fans of Caitlin are not involved. There are a lot of persons in the group. Let's be clear, when we consider the Fever, we're talking about a truly sizable and diverse population. As we dig into the uncomfortable specifics of this, we are, in fact, discussing a toxic segment of that overall organization, individuals who are actively promoting hate speech, pushing racial agendas, and fueling internet division. They're acting as fans, acting as Fever fans, but their true intentions are far from it. And at this precise point, things have escalated to become truly profoundly bad. Sue Bird adamantly claims that this entire racial problem has been cynically weaponized, transforming into an outright excuse for other players to mistreat Caitlin Clark, not just verbally, but physically right there on the court. It very much appears that the serious charge of racism is being shamelessly used as a pretext to unfairly attack her, and the whole issue is no longer contained within the realm of basketball strategy. Bird made it abundantly clear that this is no longer just a competitive game. People are intentionally targeting Caitlin with their personal grievances in an utterly inappropriate manner, whether those grievances stem from deep-seated racism, sheer jealousy, or any other ugly emotion. So in addition to enduring relentless verbal abuse, Caitlin is also being subjected to blatant roughing up and deliberate elbowing. Everything is becoming far too intimate, too personal. Just look at Lady Carter's cheap shot on Caitlin Clark in that one play. It screamed foul, and as Caitlin herself said, it was just not a basketball play. When Sue asserts that the entire racial bias debate has been weaponized and is fundamentally beneficial to nobody, she is pulling no punches whatsoever. She believes players like Reese and Thomas are actively worsening the already volatile situation by using the court as a battleground for their own personal grievances, instead of genuinely working to address the real systemic racial issues that undeniably exist within the league. Now, to be absolutely clear, Bird is not saying that we shouldn't talk about race. That's critical. Instead, she is passionately arguing that this current approach is entirely the wrong course of action. Instead of fostering unity and bringing people together, what's happening to Caitlin is only serving to make society even more divided. So the burning question remains, what will the Indiana Fever do in direct response to this unprecedented situation? This kind of divisiveness is absolutely not what true supporters of the Fever or the WNBA are all about. It's not what the organization stands for, and it certainly doesn't reflect any of us in any manner, shape, or form. I believe we are now finally in a position to boldly move forward. And let me tell you, it's also an incredibly thrilling, pivotal period for the team. So what's the very next action? Where do we go from here? How can we possibly climb up to the top 4 seeds from our current 6th place position? Honestly, none of us were truly prepared for the sheer intensity of what it was going to be like. In my opinion, Caitlin is an absolutely terrific player, and we all felt she would have a significant immediate impact on the team, but like any rookie stepping into the greatest league in the world, it was simply going to take some time to adjust. Well, she certainly did adjust, and then the thing about Caitlin, though, is that she is ridiculously competitive. She wants to win every single exercise, even a simple shooting drill, and that fierce drive just relentlessly encourages her to strive for unparalleled greatness. And this past year, she accomplished things that unequivocally placed her in that elite category. She makes everyone around her undeniably better because of her exceptional game, her incredible playmaking skills, and her innate ability to engage and elevate every single person on the court. However, I would confidently argue that she actually surpassed every expectation, simply because I genuinely don't believe any of us truly understood the full scope of what her impact would look like. So with all that said, what are the crucial next? The Fever are on the cusp of experiencing a truly major transformation, even though all the details haven't been explicitly laid out yet. And let me tell you, now that Amber Cox has officially arrived, nobody is truly safe. Kelly Kruskov was recently reinstated as the Fever's president of basketball and business operations, while the organization simultaneously just appointed a brand new general manager. This new, powerful front office will be attempting to enact some truly major adjustments as players inevitably come and go, and new ones join the squad throughout the winter. Caitlin Clark, unfortunately, will lose some close friends in this process. But crucially, she will also see certain individuals like head coach Christian Sides, who she would undeniably want to see go. Actually, yes, you heard that right. They will be dismissing their own coach this winter. The Indiana Fever will absolutely, unequivocally be reshaped, refined, and upgraded by these monumental modifications, steering them towards a dramatically different, hopefully brighter future. So, what are your thoughts about all of this? When the 2025 season tips off, are you anticipating significant changes within the Fever organization? With a completely revamped team, strategically centered around the unparalleled talent of Caitlin Clark, they will definitely be able to fiercely compete for a coveted spot in the top 4.